In Movies and Money today, Erik Childress of the Chicago Film Critics Association joins you now to talk about what's coming up at the box office. And really, Batman versus Superman, already a big winner. Will it win again this weekend?
It should easily win this weekend. I mean, there's really nothing opening up this weekend to even challenge it, but this brings up to a very sort of interesting conversation, because you mentioned Batman versus Superman was a big winner this past weekend, and absolutely was. It made precisely what the studio wanted it to make. $166 million, $424 million worldwide. It's more than halfway to its goal, which is about $800 million is what they need to actually start making a profit on this thing. Now, that's a number that the studio should actually make pretty easily, but I have a feeling that you're going to actually see this thing actually start to take a tumble now that word of the mouth. First you had the critics had their take on it. Now audience members, the best thing you hear from a lot of word of mouth is saying, well, it wasn't as bad as the critics say, but it's not that good. And I think that what they've done with this movie might have damaged the future of potential DC movies, because if people are not that enthusiastic about this movie now, and they're going to let Zack Snyder continue on and do the Justice League and do some of these other standalone movies, that they've sort of mortgaged their future, that they're going to get their money now, and later on the audiences might not be showing up as much.
They'll think twice about going.
I think so, and I think this weekend you're going to see it actually take a huge drop at the box office. Granted, there's not much to see. You might get some spillover. People are just sort of still curious about the movie, but I have a feeling you might see this thing maybe do under $50 million this weekend.
You did not love this film.
No, it's not a very good film. There's a lot of problems with it. I don't think it's the worst thing I've seen this year per se, but it's a film, like I said, it's going to cause a ripple effect. I think that as the audiences catch up with where the critics are coming from, that the critics were not bought off by Marvel to say bad things about this movie, that we weren't being paid, we weren't in the pocket of anyone to say negative things. We're just reviewing a movie, and the fact that people are writing these stories that there's now this divide between critics and audiences, well, that's kind of always been the case, but at the same time, we have supported a lot of the movies that have made a lot of money over the years.
Well, that's what Rotten Tomatoes is for.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to a film that's coming out this weekend, God's Not Dead 2. Did this happen?
If you're asking whether I responded to a student's question, yes.
And your answer incorporated the words of Jesus.
What were you thinking, Grace?
The Tholies are asking that you be fired.
Was there a reason to come out with a sequel?
Well, the first one made a lot of money. I mean, the first one had a very small budget. These faith-based films are independently produced most of the time, and the first film was budgeted like $2 million, and it ended up grossing over $60 million at the box office. So just mathematically, that's just good business to make a sequel, whether or not it's going to be any good. Now, the good news is that there's really you can only go up from the first movie, which I've considered actually one of the most evil films I've seen in the last 2 years.
Why do you call it an evil film?
Well, because I think it actually does a disservice to people of faith. I think it actually makes them look bad, as opposed to people who want to actually have the debate and have an actual discussion about faith and about spirituality. And this film actually takes it to such an extreme that it casts a damper on these people. And now the fact that the sequel is actually opening on April Fool's Day, maybe I don't know if that's planned or not, but that's the only thing opening wide this weekend, really.
In Ecclesiastes, it says, there's nothing new under the sun. So we'll just leave it on that note and move on to Midnight Special.
You don't have to worry about me.
I'll always worry about you, Alan. I like worrying about you.
And this is a film that's been in limited release for a few weeks now in New York and LA, and it's starting to slowly dribble out. Another Warner Brothers release, actually. Jeff Nichols, who has done some wonderful films in the past. The last film he did with Mud with Matthew McConaughey and Reese Witherspoon, which is a wonderful film people need to check out. And this is sort of almost like a throwback to movies of the 1980s, sci-fi films, road trip movies. It has a lot of John Carpenter's Starman in it, and films about fathers and sons. And it's a really just good science fiction movie. You want to see a movie that actually does have something interesting to say about belief and spirituality and things like that, go see this movie. You can, it's PG-13. You can actually go take your kids to see it. Actually, it does have a little bit of violence in it, but I think you'll give the fathers and sons a lot more to talk about than some of these other movies. So if it's opening in your area and it's opening in Chicago this weekend, go see this movie, because it's one of the few movies out there that's actually worth seeing right now.
Sounds like a red box weekend to me. Did I tell you I saw The Intern?
No.
I loved it.
Okay. Well, that was one of the few hits. I'm sure Warner Brothers is very happy to hear you say that, because it's one of the few movies that actually made money for them last year. Now they got Batman versus Superman. They'll probably make some money on that, but we'll see how it goes moving forward.
Thank you, Erik.
Thank you.